Hello, hello, and welcome once again to the David Messiah YouTube channel, where our watchwords are to teach and to build back up the kingdom of Zion. And my name is Sidney Thomas. I'm the founder and the moderator of this channel. Welcome once again. The title of this talk is Numerological Case Study, the words spirit, body, soul, and mind. Numerological case study, the words spirit, body, soul, and mind. And once again, as is my usual practice, there is attached, or rather a link is given to an audio talk, which is to be found on Google Drive, where the guts of this presentation is given. But here in this transmittal video, I wish essentially only to kind of give a summative overview of what this is about and the motivation for doing it and how it arises. Well, it arises simply because it's a follow-up to my last upload, which was on numerology and the Messiah. And there I attached a 3-hour audio lecture, really, it was a lecture, on numerology per se, with just a sort of a brief application to one of the signs of the David Messiah, which will be that he will somewhere in his makeup, either in his birth date or in his name, he will have the number 666 present, because the number 666 is the number of, as Scripture says, a man, and signifying a master potentate of master potentate, or a king of kings. Solomon had that numerological sign in his makeup, as we know from 1 Kings, I believe, chapter 10, verse 14. And of course, the beast also of the fourth kingdom has 666 in his makeup, as we know from Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, if I am not mistaken. So it is neutral in its numerological significance. It does not, in and of itself, in any way mean the wicked one. Energy is neutral, and numerological attributes likewise are neutral in their sort of moral significance. Okay, so I think that point was well made. But I want now, in giving this a case study of the words spirit, body, soul, and mind, to kind of make the system accessible, more accessible than I made it the last time, to those who would be interested. And so on the screen, I'm showing the correspondence between the numbers from 0 to 9 and the letters of the English / Roman alphabet. So all the vowels, as you will see, A, E, I, O, U, are given 0, represented by the number 0, meaning to say that all the meaning inheres not in the vowels at all, rather in the consonants. Okay, so for number 1, we have the correspondence with letters B, V, and N. For number 2, we have hard C, K, and P. For number 3, we have D and Q. For number 4, we have F and S and soft C. For number 5, we have hard G, as in gate, and T. For number 6, we have H. For number 7, we have J, Y, soft G, as in Jerry, and W. For number 8, we have letters L, R, and X. And for number 9, we have letters M and Z, or Z. And the source of this is in my book, Numerology and the 7 Days of Creation. Table 2.1, issued under my spiritual name, Malachi Yahya Ben Yami. Okay, so in order to take to give the numerological analysis of a word, we simply use this table to break down the word and to insert the numerological correspondences of the letters of the word, and then to reduce in the manner that I have already mentioned. So this is the sort of reference table to which I commend the listeners' attention, to those who may be interested. And I make the remark that there is a numerological scheme present where for the English letters we would simply go for number 1 it would be letter A, for number 2 it would be letter B, for number 3 it would be letter C, and so forth. And then once you get to 9, then to sort of continue down the alphabet, but go back to the letter 1. So number 9 on that scheme would be letter I. Sorry, A B C D E F G H I A B C D E F G H. Yes. So number 9 would be I, and then letter J would be 1. And then you would continue along in that simple way, and it works, I think. Certainly, I had in my sort of spiritual growth, I once had a numerological chart done by a Hebrew brother, Craig White, and that was the simple system that he used. And really, it was a trigger because it was when he gave a reading, the numerological chart was only sort of like if you like, a catalyst to his spiritual sort of faculties, which kind of opened up, and it was like he was receiving these messages, and he got the message that was sent, and he conveyed that to me, and it turned out to be quite accurate. But nevertheless, when I was guided to develop this numerological scheme, I was specifically guided to leave out the vowels and adhere more closely to the Hebrew scheme, but nevertheless applying it to the English and Roman letters, and also guided to make the distinction between hard C and soft C, hard G and soft G, and as you see here. And also V and B were clubbed together, so that when in the modern Hebrew at any rate, they give us Yaakov with a V instead of Jacob with a B for Jacob. The numerological result would be the same either way. And in the same way, letters Y and J are clubbed together and assigned number 7. And also soft G, number 7. Okay, but otherwise, continuing down the alphabet in a purely sort of sequential fashion also is adopted. So it's following the sequential pattern of the simpler system, but with a few sort of changes necessitated to make it hew more closely to the Hebrew. And the numerological scheme that results is similar in some ways to Hebrew gematria, but very different simply because in gematria the Hebrew letters are used for the bigger numbers, like, so you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then continue on to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So in that way, the last letter of the modern Hebrew alphabet, letter Tau, is given a value of 400. So it is the scheme in gematria is very different from what is here developed. But nevertheless, in terms of what is here developed, because there is significance given to repeating digit sequences, we can identify the occurrence of higher numbers like 666 and 777 in a way that will become more evident as we now continue. So that's that. But as to the words spirit, body, soul, and mind, these come about in a very sort of intriguing way, because in the numerological reduction, we find that spirit works out to number 10. It reduces to number 10. And I can do it very quickly just using this table here. Spirit is S-P-I-R-I-T. So the first letter is S, which has a number 4 associated with it. The second letter is letter P, which is a 2. So that's a 4 and 2, 6. We ignore the vowel I. The next consonant is R, which is 8. So that's 4 and 2, 6, and 8 is 14. And then the last letter, consonant rather, is letter T, which is 5. So 14 plus 5 is 19. That's the first layer of reduction. And we first of all note that the number 19, as opposed to a digit sequence, is not 1 followed by 9. It is the whole number 19. The 19th day of creation is the 5th day of the 3rd week. So one of what applies in this system of numerology is that associated with that word spirit, at the first order of reduction, is an overtone of 5. But we reduce the 19 further. We take 1 plus 9 and we get 10. Well, we still haven't got between 0 and 9, but we note that 1 plus 0 is 1. So the fundamental to which it reduces is the number 1, but we come via 10. And 10 has a special significance in and of itself as one of the teen numbers, so to say. And 10, being the 10th day of creation, is the 3rd day of the 2nd week. And so again, there is an overtone of the number 3. Okay, so it reduces to 1 with an overtone of 3. And that is the idea of the superposition principle, as we find in musicology. That if you take 2 notes, say note C and note E, and you play them together, you have a simple chord. You also play G with it, you have now a 3-note chord. And they superpose. So a chord is a sound entire, comprising its constituent notes. And a chord combination can be either pleasing, sort of mutually reinforcing in a sense, or it could be displeasing, discordant, disharmonic. Okay, so that concept applies in numerology when we apply it now to the mental, emotional, spiritual, and in general psychological sort of spheres of man's existence. Okay, so now the fundamental one is combined with the overtone of 3 to give a chord. Now we also can include the 5 that we identified earlier, arising from the first level reduction, which was to 19. But what generally we do is that we use only the most recent of the overtones. So we would sort of dismiss the number 5 overtone and just consider 1, the fundamental, along with its overtone of 3. And in this case, there was no undertones were identified, because to identify the undertones, what you would do is you would take the numbers as they are given. I think there were four. What were they? 4 and 2 and 8 and 5. 4, 2, 8, and 5. So you would, to identify undertones, you would rearrange those digits. Hey, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would rearrange those digits in increasing order and look for repeating digit sequences. So when you do that, you have 2, 4, 5, and 8, right? And there are no repeating digits, so there are no undertones to report or to include. Okay, so we do the same for the other ones, for body, for soul and mind, and what we come up with is an interesting and, as I said, intriguing result. That for body, we already found for spirit it reduces to 10, and with a further reduction down to 1. For body, it reduces to 11, with a further reduction down to 2, obviously, with an overtone of 4. And in that case, there is an undertone of 11 or 1 1, a repeating digit sequence 1 1, which is that of the master teacher. Then when we do the same analysis for soul, we get just two numbers, 4 and 8. 4 plus 8 is 12. So it reduces to 12 with an overtone of 5. And the number 12, as opposed to the digit sequence 1, 2, the number 12 as such has special significance as the number of perfect expansion. That is the number that is there associated with the 12 tribes of Jacob, or the 12 sons of Jacob, or 12 tribes of Israel, and associated with the 12 signs of the zodiac and other things like that. And it has a significance in sacred geometry, which allows us to conclude essentially that it represents an energy, a vibration of perfect expansion. So if you want to set up an organization to grow, it's good to start off with a base of 12, so to say, and then from that you expand. And then for mind, it reduces to the number 13, which reduces further to the fundamental of 4 with an overtone of 6. But what is significant there is that spirit is number 10, body is number 11, soul is number 12, and mind is number 13. They line up in sequence. So here is a case where we may be challenged to apply numerology to derive from that result a sharper understanding of, if you like, the theological problem or the cosmological problem of delineating the differences among these four concepts of spirit, body, soul, and mind. For example, what's the difference between spirit and soul? What's the relationship between body and soul? What is the difference between spirit and mind? Those kinds of questions. And when we apply the significance of the numerological correspondences, we find that the results that we have just outlined, 10, 11, 12, 13, help us to do that delineation in a way that makes sense, and therefore in a way that we might better understand cosmologically and theologically what these concepts are. Now, when we do that, we also must marry the numerological with what we already have talked about in terms of the tree of life and the spheres, the 10 spheres, of that tree of life from 1 at the top down to 10 at the bottom. 1, if you remember, representing omnipresence, the central theme, and that in itself corresponded to what was done on the first day of creation. Okay, and then down to 10, where we had to introduce now the insights from the 10 Commandments to go beyond the seventh day, which is when the Most High rested. So there were only 7 days of creation. But this numerological scheme is going down is a base 10 system. Okay, so if you remember that little sort of wrinkle in the development that we had. But the talk in itself, the lecture is about, it's a little over an hour. And I'm just wanting here now in this transmittal video to kind of give this summative result as to the delineation of these concepts, spirit, body, soul, and mind, and how the numerological results help us to sharpen that delineation. Okay, and we're going to go down with it, and then we're going to go back up with it. So spirit is number 1. And I'll deal here first just with the fundamentals. Spirit reduces to number 1. The number 1 is the central theme of a thing and corresponds to what was done on day 1 of creation. Let there be light, and there was light. Okay, so the basic agenda was set on that very first day, because above the tree of life, corresponding, if you like, to number 0, the Ein Sof, in other words, no face, no teeth, in the literal Hebrew representation, the formless void state of the Most High, it is, as well as it is darkness, really, because there is no form. There are no things. All we have is pure potential in terms of mind and matter, if you remember that sort of delineation. So on the first day, when you say, let there be light, the announcement being made is, okay, now we're going to bring things into existence. And first requirement of that is to set that initial godly vibration, which creates light, because light is a vibration, isn't it? And everything else in creation, all the thingliness of the world as has been created, goes back to a vibrational principle of one form or another. That's the key insight that comes out of numerology. And what also rides on that insight is the idea that the universe is like unto itself. The universe contains within it a model of itself. And that model of itself is what we know of vibration in the purely sort of physical spaces of time, space, and matter. But with numerology, we take the same concepts that we use in the physical science of acoustics, so to say, and vibration and wave theory, and what pertains to the analysis mathematically of a vibrating string, and also how it impinges on the air apparatus so that we can distinguish faster frequency beats. But also when beats get to a high enough sort of frequency, we observe, we sense through our air apparatus whole notes entire, which is what gives us the musical scale. And then when we're doing that, we have those 3 principles that I mentioned the last time. The principle first of additivity, which applies in numerology and applies also in beat frequency. There's a simple arithmetic of frequency. The principle of chematics, okay, which as you vary the frequency at which you excite a metal plate, You vary the sort of patterns, grid patterns that form on such a plate when you throw salt or sand or other, particles of requisite heft on the plate. You find they form themselves into a grid pattern corresponding to those areas on the flexing plate that remain at rest. But there are other areas in between the grid that is established where the plate is flexing up and down at whatever frequency of excitation you apply to it. So this is the idea of the chematic or cymatic principle. And that applies also, is what we are asserting, in the mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological spheres. Right? So all we're doing is we're applying a model from the physical and extending it conceptually into a model of the mental, emotional, spiritual, and in general psychological spheres, the ineffable sort of aspects of man's existence, where we must also bring into account, so to say, the sensory apparatuses that we use. So when it is in the physical and we're doing vibration as applies to sound and acoustics, it's the air apparatus. But there's also the apparatus, the sensory apparatus of the eye for those things which are sight-based. And there's also the sensory apparatus of the nose for those things which are scent-based. And also the sensory apparatus of the tongue, the taste buds. Okay, and so there's vibrational correspondence or analogues in those sensory spheres as there is for the sound sphere, if you see where I'm going. So the idea of the chematic principle applies to a perfume. You can become entranced by a perfume. And this has spiritual significance as well, because we use perfume, we use incense as part of paying homage to the Most High when we pray. You don't get into the Holy of Holies, as we know from the story about Aaron and his sons, waving the wrong incense. You have to come with the right smell. So all the sensory apparatuses sort of fall to a vibrationary kind of analysis, for which the model is there worked out mathematically in the sphere of physical and sound acoustics. So that's the whole idea of numerology. So additivity principle as in acoustics, chematic principle as again in acoustics, and then the third principle was the what's it called, the periodicity and superposition principle. The idea you could take notes and combine them into chords, and some chords sort of reinforce each other into a pleasing sound, and other chord combinations sort of destroy each other in a sort of a discordant or disharmonic sound. Well, that applies in the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical spheres as well, the more ineffable spheres where all the other senses also come into it, including the senses of the intellect, which is elaborated in the tree of life, and also per se, and also the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You understand? Okay, so now with the going back now to these particular words here, spirit is number one. And we do use in our language the idea of the spirit of a thing. You can talk about the spirit of a law, which is the central theme of the law, what it is you are seeking to achieve by introducing the law. And we make a distinction between the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. And very often, sometimes, when you apply the letter of the law, you destroy the spirit, isn't it? That's why there's a saying that the law is an ass. But the point I'm making is the reduction of spirit to the number one is very much in tune with what the spirit means, the word. Because the spirit of a thing is the central theme of a thing, therefore it is that number one vibration. And then when we go to body, it reduces at the first level to number 11, further reduces to number 2. Well, number 2 is the schoolhouse, corresponding to that space that was created on the second day when the Most High erected the firmament, with the waters above, the waters below, and in that space that was thereby created, from the waters emerged the earth. Okay, so this is the schoolhouse. So what we are saying is that the body, in carrying that word in itself, carrying the number 2 vibration, what we can sort of infer from the numerological result is that the body is like a schoolhouse of the soul. So we the body contains its illusions. It contains its sort of tangible sense apparatuses, and intellectual apparatuses. I don't know if I should use the fancy Latin apparati, but you know what I mean for the plural. And we are tasked to overcome. This is what is there in Scripture. He that overcometh, I will give to eat of the tree of life, to eat of the hidden manna. And that's why we have to sort of fast from time to time to bring the body into subjection. So in that sense, the body in and of itself is a schoolhouse. It all carries the vibration of the schoolhouse. And it reduces to number 11, which is the vibration of the master teacher. So the body is a master teacher. And it's either you're going to learn the lessons that it sort of is there to teach you, or you don't learn the lesson, you become a dullard, subject to all what the body sort of tempts you with in terms of gluttony and sensuality and etc. You see, so this also makes sense. And then the other one, the third one, is soul. Soul reduces to the number 12, which reduces further to the number 3. 1 plus 2 is 3. Along with that special number, which is the number 12, which is that number of perfect expansion. And that also makes sense because the soul is that opener of the way. Associated with every body is a soul. Associated with number here it gets a little bit complicated, so let me keep it simple. It is the soul and the soul memory that is associated with every body, not every body as in every one, but every body, B-O-D-Y, okay, in that literal sense, that becomes now the sort of playground upon which this drama, this learning that takes place in Schoolhouse Earth may take place. Right? So the soul is like that stage upon which the play sort of unfolds itself. That is a little bit sort of loose but let it do for the moment. And there's more discussion in the audio lecture. And then the final one is mind, which reduces to number 13. And 1 plus 3 is 4, so the ultimate reduction is to the number 4. And the number 4, if you remember, is the number of foundations. On the fourth day, the Most High created the sun and the moon and the stars as a way to tell time, and as a device for signs and wonders and etc. in the sky. But anyway, conceptually, the keeping of time was foundational to then the whole process that would unfold, because some limited time period is given for that whole thing to unfold. He gives us essentially 7 millennia, or 7 days, each day being a millennium. Okay? So there too, we are clear that mind is foundational. Mind was up there in that formless state when the earth was without form and void. But there's clearly pure potential mind there and pure potential matter there as well. Okay? So that also makes sense, that mind should be should carry the number 4 vibration numerologically as that vibration of foundations. Because in every one of the spheres, from 1 down to 10, the principle of mind must be present. The principle of mind, if you remember, could be broken down into sort of like a continuum, with consciousness, a passive polarity at one extreme, and will, an active polarity at another extreme. So at every stage in the unfolding, there's mind present. So that when we are trapped, so to say, in the body at sphere 10, but with all the potentiality sort of, represented by the 9 spheres that are above, in terms of intellectual apparatus, in terms of moral apparatus, in terms of trying to climb back up that tree of life to life eternal with the Father, an exercise of will is required, which in turn presupposes the existence of consciousness, isn't it? So mind has to be present at every stage of the unfolding, and then indeed at every sort of stage, or every sort of manifestation of existence, where we bring to bear the sense apparatus, the intellectual apparatus, the moral apparatus, the choice apparatus, whether we're going to choose based on the tree of knowledge or whether we're going to choose based on the tree of life. At every stage, mind is required. That's the foundation. So that also makes sense. All right. So if mind is the foundation, then we can go the other way, isn't it? Because you start with a foundation, as the lawyers would in a court. You lay first the foundation, and then you adduce that which you wish to adduce, having laid the foundation, isn't it? So in another sense, we could go back up, and instead of spirit, body, soul, and mind, we can talk about mind, soul, body, spirit. Go back up. And we've already kind of made the point that every sphere, mind is present, consciousness and will, right? So that's we start at mind. And let's go now to the one preceding it, which was soul. Well, what is the soul? Every body comes with a soul, right? When the breath is blown into the nostrils of the fresh body that is created, the soul that is tied to that body becomes a living soul. When the breath is taken away, that soul is no longer amongst the quick, but is now amongst the dead, so to say, and the body can decay. But the soul remains. And the idea of that is there in sphere 9, because sphere 9 in that tree of life is where resides the soul memory, certainly, and where also resides the seat of the emotions. Because memory is the sort of prerequisite to every emotion. Right? If you have been burnt, so to say, with a fire, then the emotion of avoidance comes in. You don't want to get burnt a second time, so when you feel the heat or you see a flame, you know to stay away. And so emotion comes into that, right? Or and conversely as well, if you have an experience which is exceedingly sort of, pleasurable, which is how drugs, can entrap the soul, which is how a beautiful perfume can also enchant, which is how a nice a song well performed can also, yeah. So we go after the pleasurable, we go after the beautiful, okay, and so there is where now the soul, as the seat of the emotion, as the seat of memory, is exhibiting in that sense the number 3 vibration, which is the opening up of the way. That is what the environment provides. It provides a way, it provides a way forward. It opens up the gate to that which needs to be, to which we are drawn, or it may close the gate to that which the soul would rather we avoid. And then after continuing back up, the number 2 there was the body, wasn't it? Right? So the soul opens up the way now to the body, because it is the body that is going to be interacting in terms of the sense perceptions with the other things of creation that the Most High has placed in our neighborhood, so to say. Okay? So the body, as that organ which contains the sense apparatuses that we use, along with the intellectual apparatuses that we use, along with the moral senses that we are supposed to use and apply. So the body is there now, providing that schoolhouse, that number 2 vibration to take us to where we are trying to go. Because what does the scripture say? I have said, ye are gods, but ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. So whether we die like men or fall like princes is going to depend upon how we use that body and its sense apparatuses and intellectual apparatuses and spiritual and emotional and the other ones, applying active will to make the choices that we do make. And then, of course, going back up, the number 1 is spirit. So to every body there is a soul, but there are a limited number of spirits. Spirits somehow seem to recur, isn't it? You can have a spirit for a whole tribe. There is such a thing as a tribal spirit. There is such a thing as a national spirit. And if you create any kind of organization, there is such a thing as the spirit of that organization. That central sort of theme that is supposed to be there, that animates what that organization is set up to do. And so it will be part of every member of the organization. So this is the idea that spirit actually does return. And this is what Solomon talked about in his book of Ecclesiastes. When he was there talking about just the way that the sun goes through its cycles, so it is with the generations of man. One generation passes away and another one comes, and there's no new thing under the sun. And this is why there's certainly not only the idea, but the knowledge amongst our ancestors that certain spirits return. That's why among the Yoruba, for example, the wise men may see in this new child that is born that he seems to have the same spirit of the Baba of blessed memory who had passed however many years prior. So they would name him Baba Tunde, which means Baba has come back. Not Baba literally, because the boy doesn't have Baba's body, nor does he have Baba's soul, but he has Baba's spirit. So here's how we can certainly delineate the difference between the soul and the spirit. Every soul, or rather every body, has a soul distinct. But different souls may carry the same essential spirit. That's why you can have a warrior spirit. The warrior spirit is a warrior spirit, whether it is Tom, whether it is Dick, whether it is Harry. Right? And this is why I happen to love soldiers. And I love soldiers because they go according to a code of honor. And they put their lives at risk to protect other people. That's the essence of the soldier spirit, and also the warrior spirit. And whether it is a Russian soldier or a Ukrainian soldier or a British soldier or a American soldier or a Haitian soldier, or indeed my own ancestors, because I have soldiers in my ancestry. We were there, at the Battle of Bladensburg, fighting as members of the Negro Corps of Colonial Marines against the Americans, and routed them. Okay, but I give honor to all soldiers, whether in a lost cause, whether in a noble cause, whether in an ignoble cause. Because sometimes as a soldier, you must simply follow orders. And I know this was a defense that was rejected at Nuremberg, but if you take that away, what does a soldier have? Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. So you can have the idea of a warrior spirit. And a warrior spirit will return. And it's there, one can see it. From one sort of, generation to the next. The idea of the warrior spirit doesn't change. So you could do any number of dramas, and you could slot in and slot out, the different nationalities and so forth. But essentially, you could do these plays about the warrior spirit. And then there's the spirit of the feminine spirit. And then there is the what you call it, the Jezebel spirit and so forth. So the spirits keep recurring. But every soul is distinct, because with every body there is a distinct soul. And when we account on the day of judgment, that soul memory, everything that we would have observed, everything that we would have done, everything that we would have thought, okay, is recorded in that soul memory. Some may rather forget. But if it's there recorded, they can do a sort of a playback when that time comes, so that there can be no sort of gainsaying whatever charge may be made. However, if guilt and sin has been blotted out, then Scripture says it will be as though it never happened. You understand? That is the beauty about being able to get back up upon that tree of life and reclimb and reconnect. retie to the Creator and find life instead of death. That is what that is. Okay, so that's the main sort of point that I've tried to make in this audio lecture. I go into some more detail in the audio talk. There are further sort of, cosmological hypotheses and speculations that one could go into that derive from the simple idea of this similitude, as I've indicated, between what we know about time, space, matter phenomenon of acoustics and time, space, matter slash mind slash emotion slash all of those things, when we go into the ineffable realms. But numerology is a way now to address it in simpler way than what mathematically is certainly possible to be accomplished when we are dealing in the purely time, space, matter realm of acoustics. But I don't want to get into all of those sort of cosmological speculations. I do, however, make the observation that the physical cosmologists have got it completely wrong if they think that it's that at the root of the Most High's creation is that sort of Big Bang, and out of which a continuously expanding universe. No, no. That's that. So we are subject to a logic, cosmology of vibration. That is the fundamental. And if you don't have that as your fundamental, then your cosmology is not insightful enough to represent the kind of mental, emotional, spiritual, and psychological dimensions of life and existence that we know to exist. So with that, I will stop there. As I always try to do, I give all praise, or I give all glory, I give all thanks, I give all exaltation unto the Most High, and to all those who are still listening, I say shalom and thanks once again for joining me.